Konnichiwa. So it's time for my favourite films. This is the Japan edition, I hasten to add. I started watching Asian films, or rather Japanese films, back in my early teens. There were a few things, I don't know what was going on at the time, but there were quite a few really big Japanese horror films coming out, and various TV channels were getting hold of these films and putting them on TV on a fairly regular basis, and I think that's partly what it was. I had a group of friends who were really into lots of different aspects of Japanese culture, from gaming to manga to anime to music to you name it. I had a friend who was interested in at least one of those things, including film, television, all of that. So I think basically the group of us, we got together and just started sharing the things that we were interested in. And I had one friend in particular, and we would hang out after school and stuff, and we would watch these Japanese horror films together. So I suppose these are some of the films that I love. I love them, I do. I've got to start with the Ring trilogy. It's one of the first Japanese horror films series that I ever watched. It's based on a book, which is also a trilogy. There was one book, actually there were 4 books, but one of the books was never made into a film, because it seems to be a bit more of a standalone thing. The basic premise is that there is a curse that has been put onto a videotape. It's a cursed videotape. You watch the film, and after 7 days you will die unless you can find a way to break the curse. The films differ slightly from the books, but in a good way, is in a positive way, I think. And it was really pushing the boundaries of horror. It was using a lot of the old imagery of the woman with the long black hair over the face kind of thing, which is very traditional in Japanese horror stories and stuff. But at the same time, it was something quite fresh and new. It was using modern technology to try and convey this curse. And it was just absolutely terrifying. The score, the way it was filmed, it was shocking because it didn't have gore. You know, it wasn't like the Saw films where it was just gore for the sake of gore. It was more about what you didn't see or hear that kind of made the experience more frightening. It was especially frightening considering I watched the second one night around my friend's house, and the moment we stopped, we did the whole thing teenagers do, you turn the lights out and everything. And the moment the film stopped, his parents' phone rang downstairs, and we were the only ones in the house. So we snuck downstairs in the dark, thinking, oh, it's the curse, to find his older brother phoning us. So that was an interesting experience. Another trilogy of films that I absolutely love is the Kenshin films. Part of the reason I actually watched the Kenshin films was because one of my favourite Japanese actors at times, Tatsuo Fujiwara, and he is in the second and third ones from the Kyoto Fire arc bit of it, as the bad guy, basically. Makoto Shisho. And I wanted to watch the first one, which is more like a standalone film, because I wanted to know about the recurring characters and what kind of relationship they had and how they all got together in the first place and stuff. So I watched the first one, and then kind of fell a bit in love with Takuro Sato, and I've been annoying Dave with that ever since. Because then I found out that he was annoyed by it, so then it became a thing to do. He should never tell me what annoys him, because I will just play on it. I've been doing it for years. We were friends before we got married, so it's fine. I know how to push his buttons. Anyway, but the Kenshin films are absolutely brilliant. So they're based on the manga by Nobuhiro Watsuki, and it's basically a samurai who wants to atone for the bad things that he did in the past, the killings. He was kind of like an assassin for hire, and he is trying to atone for that by, he's got a back-bladed sword, so he can't possibly hurt the people he's fighting. He can only defend the weak. And he just wants to sort of protect his own little world, but in the process, the only way he can do that is by protecting Japan at the same time. And I absolutely love it. I think they're pretty well cast, they're pretty well written. There's some clunky bits of CGI in places, but to be honest, they are some of the best live action adaptations of a manga that I've seen in a long, long time. We won't mention Attack on Titan, but there you go. So I just wanted to get those ones in there because I love them. I have a passion for those films. I've lost track how many times I've watched them over the last couple of years. Also, what I love about the Kenshin films is at the end of every single one, there's a different One OK Rock song, and I love them. They are my favourite band, and I'm just going to sneak this one in here now. I love their new album so much. I haven't stopped listening to it in nearly 2 weeks. That's completely beside the point, but that's kind of how I got really into One OK Rock, because their songs were on the end of it. I thought, these films are amazing, I love these, and I loved Akira Sato, but at the same time I loved Marucci and One OK Rock. But there you go, anyway. So that's how I kind of got into them, because of the Kenshin films, which is bizarre, but it worked. Getting back onto the horror theme, the same director, Hideo Nakata, I'm probably pronouncing everything wrong because my Japanese pronunciation is shockingly bad, but I'm trying. He also directed Dark Water, which is also based on a book by the same author who wrote the Ring books. There's a mother and child who move into a haunted apartment after a really messy sort of divorce that she's going through, and they discover the truth about a missing resident. And it's actually heartbreakingly sad. It's not so much scary, it's just really, really, really sad. But a really compelling film, and it's like the Ring films, it's another one that Hollywood tried to remake, but just kind of lost some of the heart in it upon the remake. Another one which is tacky as hell in places, and a bit like the really old sort of 70s, 80s horror films of West, but I love it. It's called Infection. It's based in a hospital, and they're basically trying to cover up. A patient dies, and they're worried about funding and stuff like this, so they try and cover up this death, and then the infection that kind of sweeps through the staff. It's not necessarily a virus, it could be a mental thing, but it's absolutely brilliant. Talking about a couple of things that were live action adaptations of mangas, which I really, really enjoyed. Death Note, which completely changed the story. Again, it's Tatsuya Fujiwara, and he's brilliant in everything he does. You know, the anime stay quite close to the manga. This one could almost be seen as a standalone film series. It's 2 films that are supposed to be Light versus L, and then another one which is L Changed the World, which kind of gives away a bit of the ending, I suppose, but they're actually really, really good. I enjoy them anyway. They might not be the best films in the world, but I actually really, really enjoy them. And I think Kenichi Matsuyama's performance as L is probably pretty much canon in most people's minds by now. These films were released 11 years ago, which seems incredibly shocking. I can't believe they were released that long ago, but there you go. There's the 2 Kaiji films as well, which again is live adaptation of manga. It's a gambler who can't pay his friend's debts, so he's given an opportunity to basically pay off the debts by winning on this gambling ship. Only if he fails, he will find himself performing slave labour. The only way out is basically with gambling with his life. And the second film is a pretty similar sort of idea. He's basically gambling for his own life and the lives of all the people he sort of lives and works with in this underground slave labour camp. Really, really good films, and they're good fun, and they're just a bit daft as well, which is kind of what you want. They kind of don't lose that kind of manga-y feel to them, which is brilliant. And one of I think probably the first Japanese film I ever saw, Battle Royale. We won't talk about the second film, Requiem. We just won't. We don't need to. Battle Royale, though, is really, really good. And it's based on a novel, and it stars Tatsuya Fujiwara, and it's the first thing I ever saw him in. And it's a group of school children. I've written it down because I will forget. A dystopian version of Japan, where the students are pitched against each other in an ultimate game to fight to the death until one remains. But is there a way for more than one of them to survive? It's really, really interesting, and if you read the novel, you kind of get a little bit more background about the characters and stuff like that, but it is amazing. The film is incredible. I thoroughly recommend watching the film. It's brilliant. And yeah, so those are my favourite Japanese films.